my garden that I built from scratch. I've shown it year after year in my videos. You can see videos with pictures of these trees when they're as skinny as my finger, and I'm building the retaining walls that hold it all in. These are all beds of bulbs and all my favorite flowers, and I got figs and stuff. I wanted to show you my fruit load coming on this year. There's Drover's grave down there. He's in the garden now. If you look from here, you can actually see my cherry plums. This is a mix. You can see it's not all the way dark red. But if you look how many plums there's going to be on there. We can go down there and look around underneath the trees. I'll show you each one. These are all trees that I started from seedlings. These weren't 6-foot tall trees when I put them in, or potted trees. These were seedlings that I brought here and put in. A lot of them I actually started from cuttings that we buried in the bank when we first got here. And it was just a scrub brush bank, very much like the hillside across the way, but developed into a bulldozed flat yard. And that's what I started with. It's my little olive. In the background there, you can see a little fence, a little log fence, and you'll notice that there's no apricots, no peaches, no mulberry. And just so you know, not very many people have seen my backyard, just my close friends and family. I live way out here, so you know how life gets when you get older. I have a handful of friends that I still get to see, and so those of you that I've shared all this with on YouTube in the last couple of years are some of the largest group of people that I've got to share my yard with in all this time, besides my family. So these trees, look how big that base is. I mean, it's about 8 inches across. Look at just this branch limb, and this is my apricot tree, and it is totally loaded up this year. If you look up through it, you can see how many are on it. These are all apricot. This is a lot of years of diligent pruning. Like I said, this was probably the size of this when I brought it here. I'm not joking. In a little bucket, and planted it. Well, much like there. There's a little volunteer. So these were dug up as volunteers in my dad's yard at Major Family Farms, and brought up here and put in a very hot slope in 100-degree sun, and watered and nurtured, and now they're big enough to shade all of this. And these are rows of daylilies that you can see spreading out, irises and hollyhocks and roses and everything else that's more shade tolerant and gives me shade. But yeah, these are about this big right now. So this was a tree full of pink blooms, and you can see there are a lot now. I've done a lot of pruning, so you notice how thick the branches are, and I'm hoping to not have to prop these. You know, you can get a lot of weight on and trees can snap themselves. If it looks like there's any chance, I will put props in, because I don't want to break such big pieces off this tree, and I live on a slope that goes down to a creek, a public creek, with no fence there, and the public is allowed to travel up the creeks in California, so it's a public creek. Just want to throw that in there for people who are paying attention. I'm not a hypocrite. This is my home, and there's a public creek. I'd never chase anybody out of it. Back to the garden. Just needed to put that in there. So there's so many on each branch that it just becomes a crazy abnormal year. I will put props in on them so it doesn't break themselves. And this is the peach tree next to it. The branches kind of mixed together, so it's hard to tell. But the peaches are a little bit bigger already, and fuzzy. That's how you can tell them. And I hope you can see that. Those are all peaches up there. Like a lot. There's a good shot. Oh, peaches. This is really the best view of them because from the outside the leaves are growing like crazy and kind of obscure it. So, that's just 2 trees. Come over, here's our almond tree. Did really good this year. This is only its 2nd year of blooming, but actually have a lot of almonds on there. You can see that. For just being, it's about a 5-year-old volunteer tree. It just popped up there. And then coming over to these peaches. They are smaller. These are little younger trees, also volunteers. I think the chickens ended up pushing peach pits through the fence and they grew, and I just ended up leaving them. So that you can see each branch of this tree is loaded up, and we might actually have to thin them out a little bit. For the same reason that I don't know if that limb could really support that many full peaches. So the bees were here, and we didn't have rain, and the blooms got pollinated and didn't get knocked off this year. This is my mulberry tree. This is a black mulberry, and even though I had tree experts tell me that I couldn't graft a mulberry, I took a white mulberry. See, it's white mulberry base, and I grew it and grafted it. You can see the graft line. And this is a black mulberry. See the round leaves? These need to come off of here. Anyways, I should tar that over so it's not open to insects, even though they have a really milky sap. They're not as insect prone as far as beetles and stuff. But right below the graft line, these white mulberry leaves, and then above it, all around, and this is its 2nd year of blooming, and you can see it's loaded up with black mulberry. And they're one of my favorite fruits, and I'm hoping that with, they can tend to be smaller, like semi-dwarf even, and grow slower. So putting the big white mulberry base on there, I'm hoping that maybe this could turn into like a 50-foot tree with 4-inch berries on it, which I've seen in older neighborhoods. I'm not even going to walk you through the yard because it's a little crazy and unkept right now. But this is comfrey. If you know herbs, this is knitbone is its common name. Since we're here, this is actually a usable, well, most of the things in this garden are. These are our oregano patches, so if you let oregano go wild, it will turn into that. This is a real wild phase in my garden right now because we still have moisture in the ground and I don't want to turn things off, you know, and cut them back yet because we're going to go into a hard summer. So a lot of this dies back and gets really short, and so I'm just enjoying it. I'm letting everything be kind of wild and bushy. Made all these pathways and all that. This isn't a video about what I have done. I just wanted to show you the fruit for those of you that have followed along each year and asked me about fruit. Last year was a hard year for fruit because of rains and stuff. Looks like raspberries are going to be doing okay. This is just one little bush. It's enough to keep a kid happy. Oh, figs are just getting their leaves, and the frost out here does a number on them, so they get burnt on the tips, and then they come back. But we got figage. This is a cutting. Figs, you can basically take a cutting and stick it right in the ground, and if you keep that wet, it will just root right in the ground for you, which I believe Danielle did, and kept this one alive until I stuck it in here, and then it stuck its roots under the kids' sandbox. Don't worry, they're getting kind of old and out of playing in there now, seeing as how 2 of them are off to college. And this is the white mulberry. See how big they get, how quick. And white mulberry is actually an awesome juice, you know, as far as mixing in with other stuff. They have a real light, gentle flavor. So some people are like, oh, I don't like them, they're not a strong enough berry. But look how heavy she loaded up this year. Do you see this? Look at that. And what I love about mulberries is that it's a tree that grows berries. So this entire tree, It's covered in berries. These are white, like I say. But the amount of juice that they put off, insane. And you can mix that with other sour fruits like plums and stuff and dilute it and still have pure juice and not just have to rely on apple, which, unless you're crushing your own apples, can be full of corn syrups and stuff. So this is the type of situation where you can grow a tree this big that has that much fruit on it just in your little urban backyard. And believe me, I have to use water from a treated plant here that comes out of the local river nearby. I live in California. In the last 10 years that I live here, full disclosure, my water bills went from around $350 minimum to around $600 minimum, meaning that that's where we start. And if I use more than my allotted however 1,000 gallons a month, then I start getting charged per whatever gallons. So I have as dire a water situation ours neighborhoods around, so it's a real stink, and it gentrified my neighborhood, caused a lot of people that couldn't afford the change. It was a voted in change, and literally our bills doubled and went to a $650 minimum is about what it is. Broke the bank for some people. I had neighbors move out all over the neighborhood because of that. So even though I have a creek here, you know, I don't have a well. And back to it, the point of that is that these trees are, they make fruitless mulberries that you'll see everybody pollarding in their front yards, chopping them back to where they're just nubs. Those are mulberries. Those are white mulberries. The other interesting thing about mulberry is that it's what silkworms eat. And if you know anything about history, the Silk Road, and how much silk was worth, you know, it's like spices, so it's been up there with gold, you know, everything else that has been heavily traded for huge amounts of money and stuff, really big deal. And they tried to move silkworms around and couldn't do it until they started moving a mulberry around. So they had to learn to become horticulturists and arborists and move the trees so they could move the worms, so they could make silk production in other lands, and so not have to be reliant upon the single Silk Road and its sources. So besides being an awesome juice tree, I love the fruit too. I'll show you them when they're ripe. This is a true cherry plum, so this is what would be considered a wild plum. They grow all over wild in California, and it's got the true dark red cherry plum leaves. So these are plums, not cherries. But look how many. But I want you to see the structure. This is me pruning. If you know plum trees, you see how many suckers come off of them. Every thorn that you see on there turns into a branch. These things can be crazy, and if I didn't prune this year, it would get crazy. Each of these turns into a whip and grows whips off of it and touch the ground and go nuts. Here's my artichokes. So in the beginning years, these would wilt every day from the heat. Now I have shade over them, and I'm getting seconds and thirds, so they're holding a lot of moisture. And these are all in just stacked terraces where I use natural rock, built it up. I could wander through my garden. You're the only people I get to show this to, really. Couple handfuls of people close to me. You know, the amount of people that come to your home. But other than that, I tell people, yes, it's doable. We live in real extreme, like I said. Had to carve this yard out of a slope equal to that one, so it was remove the diggers and push the brush aside, cut pathways through it. There's still brush left here. This is my artichoke swath. You know how they move around. And that brings us over to Drover. Hi, Drover. And he's under, that was Drover's original purpose, was to guard these trees, because I had deers before I had fences up that would raid my yard, and they would eat everything down to a little stick, and the tree would die. So Drover let me do this. Serious, not a tree here, not a stick of shade. The tallest bushes were hip high. They had bulldozed this yard to make a spot for the house. This was put here in 2006 on foundations. It's a modular home. And when I got here, this was bulldozed clay with a picnic table and rebar from the foundation that they didn't use, you know, rusting, heaped over the picnic table. And, you know, when you dig foundations, there's the piles of dirt. There was the pile of dirt that went around the house here. And the rest of it was just kind of steep, non-terrace, non-pathway scrub brush that had grown back since the dozers had come through and done the push to make the ledge. And now we're under the tree. So if you know pruning and you prune your trees and stuff, I'm pretty proud of these. Now I haven't been by here again this season, and you can see I've had beetles attack them and the woodpeckers come by and try and save them and all that. But yeah, there's one of my babies right here when they're like that. And you can see the pruning on it. I'm pretty proud of it. You can see how many forks there are in them and how big those forks are now. And that allowed me, this year it's putting on quite the load. I don't know if you can see that. And this is a mix, so this is the Santa Maria, the yellow plum, mixing with the cherry plum. And this will be the Santa Maria. They have a pure green leaf. You can see how many are on there, and they turn yellow and just have an absolutely sweet, you know, yellow flavor to them, as opposed to the cherry plum, which can be super kind of soury if you like tart, sweet tart type of things. And so we got cherry plum, Santa Maria, and a mix. So this one will be kind of a blushy creature, which is good. And mulberries and fruiting pecans that aren't fruiting. And more artichokes. That's my little fence line. I have 0.4 acres here. That's it. And yep. So those are a lot of my fruit trees that are fruiting in the back. Of course, I wish there were still little dinky kids playing in the sandbox, but that's how life goes. Sometimes by the time your fruit trees are big, so are your kids. This is an apple, another little volunteer. It grew from a seed in our yard, because apple seeds have to get down to 30 degrees, you know, below freezing to activate, to germinate. And it gets that cold up here, so we actually had apples that were sprouting from seeds that we spit out, and this is one of them. And beetles have come through and done a number on it, but it's trying to recover and shoot up and join part of the canopy. And then eventually I can just be under here. Those are the peaches and stuff, and the trees continue over that way. But that's just what I wanted to show you, is those couple of gardens. And we're about to put in the veggies that just stopped freezing. Hi.
Hi.
I was just about to say goodbye to these guys. That's for the evening. I show them all the fruit that we got going on in the yard. Are you excited? Me too. Okay. Well, we'll see you next time then. Thanks for sharing this with me.